Amelia, please open your eyes.
David.
No, it's me, Noah.
The windshield exploded before Daniel even understood why the truck was coming at them. Metal screamed. Glass rained into Anna's face. And with blood in her mouth, she grabbed his sleeve, looked at him like she was seeing a ghost behind him, and whispered one name. Jonah. If stories like this pull at something deep inside you, subscribe, like the video, and stay with me until the end, because this one doesn't just break hearts, it changes them. The car spun twice, slammed into the barrier, and stopped with the engine hissing like an animal dying in the rain. Daniel couldn't hear out of his left ear. He tasted blood. The dashboard glowed a sick orange. Airbags covered half his face. For a second, he thought they were both dead. Then he heard Anna choking. He tore the airbag away and turned to her. Her forehead was split open. Her eyes were fluttering. One arm was pinned awkwardly beneath the crushed door. She looked at him, but not really at him. Past him. Through him. Jonah, she whispered again, this time weaker, urgent, terrified. Don't let my father find him. Then her head dropped sideways. Daniel froze, not because she had passed out, because in 11 years of loving her, 8 years of marriage, and hundreds of late-night conversations where they'd told each other things no one else knew, he had never heard that name once. Sirens came fast, too fast. A paramedic ripped the door open and shouted at Daniel to stay awake, but Daniel barely heard him. He kept staring at Anna as they cut her free, soaked in rain and red flashing light, while one thought kept pounding in his skull harder than the pain. Who the hell was Jonah? At the hospital, they separated them. Daniel got 14 stitches near his temple, a sling for his shoulder, and instructions he never listened to. He kept trying to leave the bed, kept trying to get to Anna. A nurse with tired eyes finally stopped pretending to be calm. Sir, your wife is in surgery. For what? Internal bleeding. That should have been the only thing he cared about. But trauma does ugly things to people. It drags the worst fear to the surface. And Daniel had spent most of his life afraid of one thing: being the last person to know the truth. His father had left when he was 9 without warning. One suitcase missing, one coffee cup still on the counter, one note on the table with 6 words: I can't do this anymore. Daniel had sworn if he ever built a life with someone, there would be no hidden door inside it, no locked room. And now, his wife had nearly died whispering another man's name. 3 hours later, the surgeon came out and said, "She made it." Daniel sat down so hard he almost missed the rest. Broken ribs, concussion, a lot of blood loss. She'd wake up, but maybe not tonight. Maybe not even remember everything clearly at first. Daniel thanked the surgeon, then walked into the ICU with his heart beating so violently it made his ribs ache. Anna looked smaller in the bed. Pale. Fragile. Nothing like the woman who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen when she cooked. Nothing like the woman who teased him for being unable to fold fitted sheets. Nothing like the woman who once looked him dead in the eye and promised, "No matter what happens, I'll never lie to you." He sat beside her and took her hand carefully. It was cold. "Who is Jonah?" he whispered. Her eyelids twitched. For one stupid second, he thought she'd answer. Instead, tears slipped out from under her closed eyes. Not 1, 2. Silent and immediate. Like even unconscious, The truth hurt. The next morning, she woke up screaming. Not loud, not long. Just one sharp, terrified sound, as if she'd fallen through the bed and landed back inside some old nightmare. Daniel stood so fast, his chair tipped over. "Anna, hey, I'm here." She blinked wildly, trying to focus. Her breathing was shallow, panicked. She looked at the room, then at him, then down at her own hands as if she didn't trust them. "What happened?" There was a crash. She swallowed. "You?" "I'm fine." That was a lie, but not the lie that mattered. Her lips parted, and Daniel saw it again. That flicker of fear. Not fear of pain, not fear of the crash, fear of what came after. "Anna," he said carefully, "when they pulled you out of the car, you said a name." She went still. He felt it, the exact moment the room changed. "What name?" "Jonah." She closed her eyes, and Daniel's stomach dropped. Because people fake confusion. They fake shock. They fake offense. But guilt? Real guilt arrives like silence. When she opened her eyes again, they were wet. "I need some water." "Who is Jonah?" "Daniel." "Who is he?" Her voice cracked. "Please don't do this right now." He almost laughed. Right now? As if there had ever been a worse right now than this. "Did I just spend all night thinking my wife might die?" he asked, barely keeping his voice steady. "While the last thing she said to me was another man's name?" Her face tightened, not with anger, but with something uglier. Shame. "It's not what you think." He stared at her. That sentence has never made anyone feel better. A nurse walked in at the worst possible moment, checking monitors, pretending not to hear. Anna turned her face away and said nothing else. Daniel waited. She didn't look back. That silence said more than an explanation could have. So he left before the nurse could see him break. In the parking lot, the rain had stopped, but everything still looked wet, bruised, and cold. Daniel sat in the car of a friend who had driven him there and gripped the wheel until his knuckles went white. He told himself to breathe. He told himself there had to be an explanation. Then he remembered her exact words. "Don't let my father find him." Not find me, not help me, find him. Whoever Jonah was, Anna wasn't just hiding him, she was protecting him. By noon, Daniel was back at their house. He wasn't proud of what he was doing, he knew that. But trust had already been cracked open, and once that happens, love turns desperate. It starts searching drawers. Their house still smelled like her perfume and the lasagna she'd made before they left. Her coffee mug sat by the sink. A sweater was draped over the dining chair. It was unbearable how normal everything looked. He started in the bedroom. Nothing. Then the closet. Nothing. Then her jewelry box. At first it looked ordinary. Earrings, a bracelet he'd bought her in Santa Fe, a ring her mother left her. But underneath the velvet lining, taped flat to the wood, was a tiny silver key. Daniel stared at it. Anna hated hiding things. She could never even keep birthday presents secret. His throat went dry. The key fit a locked metal box in the back of the hall closet. Inside were 3 things. A faded hospital bracelet with Anna's maiden name, a stack of letters tied with blue ribbon, and a photograph of a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket, a date written on the back in trembling handwriting. June 14. My Jonah, forgive me. Daniel sat on the floor so hard the box slid from his lap. For a few seconds, he couldn't even process it. He just stared at the photo while 1,000 impossible memories tried to rearrange themselves. Anna at 17. Anna pregnant. Anna giving birth. Anna never telling him. His hands shook as he untied the letters. The first one was dated Jonah's first birthday. The next, his second. Then third, fourth, fifth. One for every year. Letters to a son Daniel never knew existed. In them, Anna wrote about the weather, about books she hoped he'd love, about how sorry she was, about a lullaby she still remembered singing into his tiny hair the morning they took him away. Daniel stopped reading when his vision blurred. Took him away. Not gave him away. Took him. His phone rang. The hospital. Anna was asking for him. He let it ring twice. Then he answered. Her voice was weak. Where are you? At home. Silence. Then, very softly, you found it. It wasn't a question. Daniel looked at the letters spread across the floor. Yes. She inhaled sharply, and he heard the pain in it. Not physical pain. The kind that comes when a secret has finally reached daylight, and you know there's nowhere left to hide. I was going to tell you, she said. When? Last night? He actually smiled at that. A short, broken thing with no humor in it. On the way to dinner? After 8 years? I know. No, I don't think you do. He stood up and began pacing. You wrote to him every year. Yes. You kept his baby bracelet. Yes. You whispered his name while you thought you were dying. Yes. Each answer hit him like a door slamming shut. Did you ever think, he asked, voice suddenly rough, that your husband deserved to know you had a son somewhere in this world? Anna made a sound that nearly stopped him. A sound half sob, half laugh. I wasn't afraid of telling you I had a son, she whispered. I was afraid of telling you I lost him. Daniel stopped moving. That landed differently. Before he could answer, she said, Please come back. I'll tell you everything. But you have to promise me one thing first. What? If I say my father is dangerous, you believe me. Daniel almost asked if this was all somehow still about another man. But the fear in her voice killed the thought. So he went back. She told him in pieces, because pain medication kept pulling her under, and every memory seemed to cut on the way out. She was 17 when she got pregnant. The father was a boy from school named Eli Mercer. Sweet, broke, reckless. Dead by 19 after a motorcycle crash. Her father, Richard Vale, had found out before anyone else. Richard, the man who now smiled from billboards and charity galas and Sunday news panels. Richard, who built a clean public life so polished people mistook it for morality. He locked Anna in the guest house for 5 months, told people she was studying abroad, told her mother not to interfere. When she went into labor, he sent her to a private clinic out of state. She held the baby for less than a minute. She still remembered his hair, black and damp against his skull, and the way his fingers opened and closed like he was trying to grab onto the world before it could leave him. Then they took him. A nurse came back later and told her the baby had died. She screamed so hard they sedated her. I believed them, Anna said. staring at the blanket on her lap instead of Daniel. For 2 years, I believed my son was dead. Then what changed? She swallowed. I found out my father paid the clinic to forge everything. The death certificate, the records, all of it. Jonah had been put through a private adoption. Daniel felt sick. Why didn't you tell me this when we met? Because by then, every time I got close to the truth, my father buried it again. Witnesses disappeared, records went missing. I looked insane. And after a while, her voice thinned. After a while, I didn't know how to explain why I was still grieving someone no one else had ever met. Daniel looked at her for a long time. You should have told me. I know. Why didn't you? Her answer came instantly, too instantly to be rehearsed. Because loving you was the first thing in my life that felt clean. And I was terrified that if I opened that door, all the poison behind it would come into this, too. Daniel closed his eyes. That was the problem with painful truth. It can make sense and still break you. Then Anna said the one thing that changed everything. I found him 3 months ago. Daniel's eyes snapped open. What? Tears spilled down her face now. No hiding them. No control. I found Jonah. The room seemed to tilt. You found him? Daniel repeated. And you still didn't tell me? I needed to be sure. Sure of what? That he was really him. That he was alive. That I wasn't going to destroy his life just because I wanted forgiveness. Daniel laughed again, but this time there was anger in it. So what? You met him? You had some secret life I knew nothing about? No. She shook her head hard, then winced from the pain. I watched him from a distance twice. That's all. I couldn't do it. I parked outside the garage where he works and sat there for an hour like a coward. The third time, I was finally going to go inside. I had the DNA results in my purse. I was going to tell you first over dinner, then ask you to come with me. Daniel stared at her. Why last night? Because my father found out I'd found him. Cold moved through Daniel's chest. How? I don't know. But he called me that afternoon and said, some graves should stay closed. Daniel didn't speak. Anna looked at him, terrified now for reasons bigger than marriage. The crash wasn't random. He wanted to dismiss that. He almost did. But then she whispered, Daniel, before the truck hit us, did the car pull to the right? He looked up sharply. It had. He remembered fighting the wheel, trying to straighten it. The violent drag. Anna closed her eyes. He cut the brakes once when I was 22. I'd started asking questions again. Daniel felt all the air leave his lungs. That evening, while Anna slept, Daniel went to the impound lot. He told himself it was just to think. Instead, he found the mechanic assigned by insurance staring at the undercarriage with a flashlight. Family? The man asked. Daniel nodded. The mechanic grimaced. You're going to want the police report updated. Brake line didn't rupture in the impact. Daniel's mouth went dry. What are you saying? I'm saying somebody cut it clean. The world got quiet again. That strange, muffled quiet that comes right before rage finds a shape. By midnight, Daniel was sitting across from Richard Vale in a private office on the 42nd floor of Vale Tower. Richard poured 2 drinks. Daniel didn't touch his. Richard did not look like a monster. Monsters rarely do. He looked expensive, calm, silver-haired, controlled down to the angle of his smile. "I was sorry to hear about the accident," Richard said. Daniel leaned forward. "You knew about Jonah." Richard's expression didn't change. That was answer enough. "She told you quite a story." The brakes were cut. Still no reaction. Then Richard sighed, almost bored. "My daughter has always confused obsession with truth." Daniel stood so suddenly the chair hit the floor. "She nearly died. And yet here you are, asking about a boy she should have forgotten 20 years ago." Daniel took a step closer. "He's her son." Richard finally looked at him directly. "No. He is a mistake I paid dearly to correct." Daniel had never hit anyone in his adult life. He came very close then. Richard didn't flinch. Instead, he said, "Sit down, Daniel. You're emotional, and emotion makes men stupid." Daniel didn't sit. Richard went on. "You think you're the first husband dragged into her melodrama? Anna doesn't know how to let go. She finds old wounds and lives in them. If you're smart, you'll take her home when she's discharged, let this fantasy pass, and protect what's left of your marriage." Then he said the one thing meant to poison everything. "Unless, of course, you're more upset she hit a son, or that she found the son's father in him." Daniel frowned. "What?" Richard smiled faintly. "Eli Mercer. Dark hair, mechanic's hands. The boy has his face." For the first time, Daniel understood the exact shape of Richard's cruelty. He didn't just bury people. He buried them where the living would choke on the dirt. Daniel left without another word. The next morning, he found Jonah. The garage was small, loud, and half falling apart. Oil stains on the pavement, country music on an old radio, heat rising from concrete. Daniel saw him before Jonah saw him. 24, maybe 25. Broad shoulders, grease on his forearm, a scar near his chin. And Richard was right. The resemblance to the photo of young Eli was sharp enough to hurt. But that wasn't what hit Daniel. It was the resemblance to Anna. In the eyes. Same gray. Same guarded sadness, like each of them had learned too young that wanting something didn't mean you got to keep it. Jonah noticed him watching. "You need something fixed?" Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Jonah wiped his hands on a rag. "You okay?" Daniel somehow said, "Did your mother ever contact you?" The question changed Jonah instantly. His face hardened. "Who are you?" "No one." "Then don't ask me about her." Daniel should have walked away. Instead, he heard himself ask, "You knew who she was?" Jonah laughed once, bitter. "I knew she was rich enough to disappear and kind enough not to look back." Daniel felt that like a punch. "That's not what happened." Jonah stepped closer. "Funny. That's exactly what the paperwork said." Daniel looked at him. Really looked. This wasn't just anger. This was a man who had built an identity around being unwanted because the alternative was admitting he'd been stolen. "Did anyone ever give you letters?" Daniel asked. Jonah's jaw tightened. "No." Daniel nodded slowly. That was it then. The missing years. The missing proof. The missing love. Not gone. Intercepted. But before Daniel could say another word, a black SUV rolled slowly past the garage, then stopped at the corner. Jonah noticed it too. Friend of yours? Daniel asked. Jonah's expression darkened. Been seeing that car all week. Daniel turned cold. He drove straight back to the hospital. Anna was sitting up now, pale and exhausted when he walked in. For a second, they just stared at each other. Two people standing in the wreckage of different betrayals. I saw him, Daniel said. Her hand flew to her mouth. Is he? He's alive. She broke. Not gracefully, not quietly. A full-body collapse into sobbing so raw, Daniel had to look away for a second because it felt too private to witness and too cruel not to. He thinks you abandoned him, Daniel said. Anna cried harder. I know. Daniel sat down beside her. He's being watched. That silenced her instantly. By who? Who do you think? Anna wiped her face with shaking fingers. Then it's already worse than I thought. What aren't you telling me? She looked at him, and this time there was no hiding left. My father has an event tomorrow night. Press, donors, cameras. He announces his Senate run officially. If Jonah surfaces, the timeline exposes everything. The affair he forced me to deny. The forged documents. The clinic. All of it. Daniel understood. Richard wasn't protecting family. He was protecting legacy. And people like that burn cities to save mirrors. What do we do? Daniel asked. Anna looked stunned. Not by the question, by the word we. You still want to help me? Daniel's eyes were tired, hurt, honest. I'm furious with you. She nodded, accepting it. But if your father tried to kill us, he said, I'm done being confused about who the villain is. The gala looked like every lie rich people tell in public. Crystal glasses, white roses, string music, soft laughter from people who had never had to beg for the truth. Anna arrived in a dark blue dress that hid her bandages poorly and her pain not at all. Daniel was beside her. The room felt it immediately. Richard saw them from across the ballroom and smiled the way a snake might smile if it wore cufflinks. You shouldn't be here, he said when they reached him. Anna's chin lifted. Neither should you. He barely glanced at Daniel. I was willing to spare you embarrassment. Daniel said, You ran out of chances. The speeches began 10 minutes later. Richard stood at the podium, polished and fatherly, speaking about service, dignity, and family. Anna laughed under her breath. Then he called her name. The room turned. Before tonight ends, Richard said into the microphone, I want to acknowledge my daughter Anna, who has endured a very difficult period of emotional instability following a car accident. Daniel felt her body go rigid beside him. There it was. Public humiliation wrapped in concern. A few guests glanced at her with instant pity, others with suspicion. Richard continued smoothly. Mental trauma can reopen old delusions, painful ones. We ask for compassion, not gossip. Anna looked like she'd been slapped. For one awful moment, Daniel thought she might crumble. Instead, she stepped forward. No, she said. Not loud, but clear. Then louder. No, you do not get to do this to me again. The room went dead silent. Richard's smile flickered. Anna walked toward the stage, each step visibly painful, but she kept going. When I was 17, she said, taking the microphone from his stunned hand, this man stole my son.
Gasps spread through the ballroom like fire finding oxygen. Richard reached for her arm. Daniel caught his wrist mid-air. Anna kept talking. He locked me away. He forged records. He told me my baby died. And when I found out the truth, he made sure every piece of proof disappeared. Richard found his voice. She is confused. No, said another voice from the back.
An elderly woman stood near the entrance, clutching a folder to her chest. Sister Miriam, the nurse from the clinic. She walked forward, shaking, but steady enough. I kept copies, she said, because I knew one day God would stop giving me time to stay silent. The room erupted. Cameras rose. Voices collided. Richard's face drained of color for the first time all night. Sister Miriam handed the folder to Anna. Inside were copies of the original birth record, payment transfers from Richard's foundation, and 12 returned letters marked undeliverable. Jonah's letters. All of them. Anna's hands trembled so violently, Daniel had to steady the folder. Richard hissed, low enough for only them to hear. You think this saves him? Daniel turned. What did you do? Richard smiled again. And that was worse than panic. That meant a move had already been made. Daniel's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. A young voice, breathless, terrified. This is Lila from Mercer Auto. 2 men came asking for Jonah. He left through the back, but they followed him toward the river. Anna went white. Daniel didn't even say goodbye. He grabbed the car keys and they ran. The River Warehouse district was dark, except for one flickering security light and the red glow of a distant train signal. They found Jonah behind an old loading dock, blood on his cheek, one knee on the pavement, a tire iron in his hand. One man was groaning nearby. The other had fled. Jonah turned at the sound of footsteps and raised the tire iron. Don't come closer! Anna stopped. For a second, no one moved. The world held its breath. She looked at him the way starving people look at bread they're afraid to touch. Jonah, she said. He laughed, but it broke halfway out. So it's true. Anna nodded, crying already. He looked between her and Daniel, then back at her. Why now? There was no speech in the world big enough for that question. Only truth. Because I was a scared girl, Anna whispered. And then I became a scared woman. And I hated myself for both. Jonah's face twisted. I thought you didn't want me. She took one shaking step closer. I wrote to you every birthday. He froze. Daniel slowly held out the folder. Jonah took it, suspicious, then confused, then shattered, as he saw the letters with dates across 24 years. His hands started trembling. He opened the first one, then the second, then another. Anna didn't move, didn't beg, didn't touch him. She just stood there and let him read the life they were both robbed of. When he finally looked up, his eyes were ruined. All this time? All this time. He swallowed hard. You should have found me sooner. Anna nodded through tears. I know. I needed you. The words came out small, child-sized. That was the heartbreaking part. Not the anger, not the blood, not the years. A grown man sounding, for 1 second, exactly like the little boy who waited too long at windows. Anna broke then. I know, she said again, but this time it sounded like a prayer and a punishment. I know. I know. Jonah took one step, then another. And when Anna reached for him, it wasn't cinematic. It was messy, awkward, painful. She winced from her ribs. He hesitated at the last second. Their arms landed wrong. And that's what made it real. Because stolen years don't come back as perfect reunions. They come back trembling. He let her hold him anyway. Daniel turned away and looked out at the river because some moments are too sacred to watch straight on. Behind them, sirens began to rise. Someone had finally called the police. Richard Vale was arrested before sunrise, not because powerful men suddenly become weak, but because once enough truth survives long enough to be witnessed, even money starts losing its nerve. Weeks later, the bruises on Anna's face faded. The bruises underneath took longer. Daniel moved back into the bedroom slowly. Trust didn't heal in one speech, or one apology, or one arrest. Some nights they talked until 2 a.m. Some nights they didn't talk at all. Once, Daniel admitted, "Part of me still hates that you didn't tell me." Anna nodded and said, "Part of me hates that too." And somehow that honesty did more than comfort ever could. Jonah didn't become a son overnight. He became a visitor first, then a call on Sundays, then dinner once a week, then the kind of person who walked into the house without knocking and complained about Daniel's coffee being too weak. The first time Daniel heard Anna laugh with Jonah in the kitchen, real laugh, head tilted back, the kind she hadn't let out in months, he stood in the hallway and let himself cry where no one could see him. Not because the pain was gone, because it wasn't. Because love had stayed anyway. One evening, Jonah found Daniel on the back porch and handed him a beer. "You didn't have to help," Jonah said. Daniel looked at him for a moment. Then he answered honestly, "Yeah, I did." Jonah frowned. "Why?" Daniel looked through the window at Anna, inside, humming softly while washing dishes, her shoulders finally carrying less weight. "Because the worst thing a lie can do," he said, "is convince good people they have to face it alone." Jonah was quiet after that. Then he nodded once. Not dramatic, just enough. Sometimes that's how men say thank you when life never taught them the full sentence. A year later, Anna framed one of the letters she never got to send. Not the first one, not the saddest one, the last one. The one she wrote before the crash. It had only one line under the date. "If I find you, I will tell the truth no matter what it costs." She hung it in the hallway where sunlight touched it every afternoon, and every time Daniel walked past it, he remembered that love isn't proven by never being wounded. It's proven by what you choose after the wound. He had almost lost her on a wet road. She had almost lost her son forever. Jonah had almost gone his whole life believing he was never wanted. But in the end, the lie that kept them apart was weaker than the truth that nearly destroyed them. And maybe that's the cruelest, most beautiful thing about families. Sometimes they are not broken by the secret. They are broken by the silence, and healed the moment someone finally says the name out loud.